What's up? Moakalatte here. Here are some answers to your Q&A. So first of all, thank you very much for taking the time to respond to my previous video with your questions, and let's go straight to it. So the first one comes in, and I'm going to be reading these questions because I can't remember all of these. My first one comes from Josh Vong, and he says, hello Josh, by the way, congrats on the 300 subs. Booyah! I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. You're more than welcome to. Question number one, was there a defining moment that made me want to pursue music? So there's a couple of bands that really got me into it when I first started. There was The Offspring and bands like Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit. In particular, Wes Borland, when he plays on the track Boiler, and I didn't know what this was at the time, so I was like, oh my God, this is the coolest thing in the world. So at the end of Boiler, in the music video, he does this thing where he like lifts up the guitar by the whammy bar, like Steve Vai style. And if you listen to the track, or even, you know, I would encourage you to watch the video, I was just like, my God, that man is so cool. You know, he's blacked out, like he's properly like covered in this makeup that he wears, that I'm sure you've all seen. He's playing this black PRS and then just lifts up the guitar and it's like this woo kind of noise. And I was like, wow, that guy is so cool. So there's that. And then weirdly, another whammy bar story. At the end of American Badass by Kid Rock, there's this guitar lick that the guitarist does, and his whammy bar is like spinning around at the same time. And again, I was just like, that dude is so cool. So it was around that sort of time, I'd be watching Kerrang. I got well into loads of different bands, and it was always that guitar, the sound of the guitar and how cool the guitarist looked that made me think, I want to do that. So yeah, not necessarily a defining moment, but defining bands or defining moments, like watching certain videos and just being like, oh my God, that guitarist is insane, so I want to do that. I hope that answers your question. Question two. What is your philosophy in life and music? Well, that's an interesting question, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I would say, and I've suffered from not doing this, so this comes from my experience somewhat. Guitarists tend to want to seek some kind of validation from people, and they like to know that they're good players. I mean, we do it because we want to show off, right? So you can't really blame us. But I would say number one is just be true to yourself. Like, do this because you want to do it, right? Don't necessarily follow what other people are saying that you should do. And I get that by saying be true to yourself, I'm saying this is what you should do. But what I mean is, like, if someone said, you know, you need to play it like this, it's this, you know, one finger per fret, or you've got to use like these three fingers when you're doing certain lines, or no, I use these ones and I just stretch, like whatever works for you, that's what you should do. And follow whatever your heart or your gut or your, you know, intuition is saying. You know, and I mentioned this on a Steve Vai video, like, do the thing that you want to do, not the thing that you think you should do, if that makes sense. Live your life the way that you want to, you know, be happy and put that number one. That's my philosophy in life and music. Do whatever makes you happy. And if you're not happy, then change it if you can. Question three, who's been my biggest inspirations? That is a wicked question, dude. Thank you so much. And I'm assuming that you mean musically, not just like generally. And some of these overlap as to how I've been inspired by the player or whatever it is that they've done musically. So here goes. I mentioned Wes Borland. His creativity is amazing. I love the way he comes up with parts, and it's so like the box is here, right? And he's like somewhere else completely. I love that about him. Ryan Phillips from Story of the Year, and used to be in Greek Fire, I believe. That's like, his sheer energy when he's performing is ridiculous, and the parts that he plays are so good. I like the parts that he writes as well. But his live performance is something that I hold in high regard, and if I could get anywhere close to that, then I would be a very happy man. Then you've got people like Stevie Ray Vaughan, you know, the El Macombo gig or the Austin City Limits gig, or they're two shows that I would highly recommend that you guys watch. just because he like owns the whole thing, man. And you know, we've all heard the rumors like he plays with 13 gauge strings and he had to like super glue his fingers at the end because, you know, he was ripping them apart on tours and stuff. And he used to be like playing off his nut on drugs in the early days, and then to still be able to do that is just ridiculous. And we all know Stevie Ray Vaughan's got a wicked blues tone, right? So that's like the pinnacle of blues tone. Incidentally, Jesse Davey, who's a guitarist that used to play in a British band called The Hoax, and he plays in the Davey Brothers, and he's got a solo album out as well. His tone is ridiculous. He makes pedals now and has got this cool switch for a Strat called, I think it's called the King Tone switch. Check it out. It makes use of that tone knob that doesn't really seem to do anything on, say, the bridge pickup, and gives you like 5 extra tones that you can use on each pickup configuration, which is very cool. So check him out. He also wires like pickups up and stuff. The guy's a legend. My buddy Ace from Skunk Anansie, for his sheer work ethic, that guy is literally non-stop all the time, and he's done very well from it. Lee Gaze, the guitarist from No Devotion, and he used to be in Lost Prophets as well, but we can't say that. His creativity and even his physical style, like, you know, I remember when he had like the whole emo fringe thing going on with blonde going on in this red Telecaster back in the day, and I'm like, that dude is cool. Like, he is a hot, cool looking guitar player, and I would like to be like that. And then Sean and Matt from While She Sleeps, pretty recently, I've got well into their playing, and the levels of perfection that they put into when they're tracking guitar is just off the scale. And then, you know, I've got to add players like Steve Vai and Rick Graham. I mean, their technical ability is just literally at the top of any guitarist that I can think of. Rick Graham in particular, his economy of motion is just insane, and I know that he's spent a long time working on that. Incidentally, check out the new Rick Beato video where he's talking to Rick Graham. It is very good, very interesting. Jason Becker as well. If you don't know of Jason Becker, I would highly recommend that you go and research his playing in the early days. And what I mean by the early days is he can't play anymore. He's a guitarist that's wheelchair bound and he can only move his eyes, but he's still making music. You know, most people would have quit long before then. But back in the day, there's a famous video of him playing in, I think the band's called Cacophony, maybe. I can't remember the name of it. Something like that with Marty Friedman. I'm sure it's Marty Friedman. Anyway, this guy's like 18 or 19 at the time, and he's coming out on stage, and he does these like legato runs, and he's just like, you know, looking badass. And then with his picking hand, just starts messing around with a yo-yo, like whilst he's still doing this insane guitar part. Again, incredible player, and major kudos for him for carrying on, because I don't think I'd be able to do that if I'd lost all ability to move. Then you got Mark Tremonti from Alter Bridge and Creed and Tremonti, and John Mayer and Paul Gilbert. All of those guys I hold in high regard, and of course I can't play anywhere close to them, but I take little bits of their playing that I think is really, really cool, and then put it into a pot, add in some of my own personality that probably subdues their technical ability somewhat. But I take things from people's playing, put it all in a pot, and add the you know, my spin on it, really, my perspective on it. So yeah, that's my big inspirations. Question 4, another very, very cool question. If I had any advice for any aspiring musicians, what would it be? I've mentioned it earlier on, stick to what you want to do and do whatever makes you happy. That should be like your, to use a Tim Cook from Apple quote, that's your North Star. You know, what is the main reason why you're playing? What's the main reason why you picked up the guitar? Do that. You know, don't do it for necessarily the fame and fortune and for recognition, but do it because of the reason why you picked up a guitar or wanted to pick up a guitar in the first place. And also focus on the things that that make you a guitarist, not make you someone that plays a guitar. And what I mean by that is, like, have an identity. So I'm not talking about things like branding on Instagram and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, like, when you hear a guitar player, you go, that's Steve Vai, or that's Paul Gilbert, or that's Guthrie Govan, or Rick Graham, or whoever it is. Work on your own version of that. So, you know, people people listen to what you're playing and go, that's Josh. Yes, definitely Josh. That's Josh playing. You can just hear it's him. Work on whatever that is. And there's another video that I mentioned before about the 3 things that are going to make you a great guitar player. In particular, your vibrato. Like, that's such an identifiable thing that every guitar player can work on and have, as well as like your tone and everything else. I think it's important to get things like vibrato right over being able to sweep pick and shred at 1,000 miles an hour, because that gets old, and you know, if you put the time and effort in, you'll be able to do it. But what sets you apart from other people, literally when they hear you, when they don't, you know, not when they see you, just when they hear you. And above everything else, just be a nice person. You know, pretty much everyone that I've spoken to since starting this channel has been a nice person, so you're all doing that bit right. But when it comes to being a working musician and you're on tour with people that, you know, you're essentially living with in very close proximity. My friend Damien Keys has got a wicked YouTube channel where he talks about this in more detail, but, you know, just be a good guy. Be the person that someone wants to take out on tour with them, as opposed to this insanely good player that's got an ego bigger than the room and no one actually wants to work with them. Number 5. This is a 2-part question, but I'll answer it anyway, you sneaky monkey. So, what was your first guitar? And what's your dream guitar? So let's start with number 1. What's my first guitar? My first guitar is this one. This is a PV Raptor, and it's had some relicking done to it, and I, for some reason, decided it'd be a good idea to cut into the pick guard, and then realised that it looks terrible, so I put it back on, but you can clearly see where I've cut it up. And then I just stuck a load of stickers all over it, and this is now dubbed the M-Cot Thug Raw, using letters from Guitar Hero. This guitar is now tuned to drop B, and I use it for, it's got this really like dirty, gnarly tone, like it's not broken, but it sounds like rough around the edges, you know. And I was experimenting with what I could do with this guitar, because I wanted to use it again just for fun, and found that low tuning on this sounds like really cool. Not necessarily for like metal, but just for like dirty, gnarly stoner riffs. Sounds well good. So this is my first guitar, PV Raptor. And I'm sure you probably know the answer to this question, or you can imagine what it might be, but anyway, I'll tell you. My dream guitar would be a PRS private stock. So for those of you that don't know, PRS have a division within their company called Private Stock, and it's basically where they have a vault of the best wood that they've found and accumulated over the years, and you have to order them via, well, if you're in the US, you can go and visit the PRS factory in Maryland, but for everyone else out in the rest of the world, you can go to your local dealer and they can work with you on what you want your dream PRS to be, and they'll make it for you. And the reason why they can make it for you is because they charge a lot of money for it. Some people out there are lucky enough to own them. Respect to you guys. But mine would probably be, custom 24, I reckon. It would be black with some kind of blue, purple, really kind of rich finish going on, which of course it would be if it's private stock. And I'd have some cool things going on with the inlays so that people could see from a distance that there's something different about that guitar. And I'd probably have, don't know if I'd have a Floyd Rose on it, I'm not sure. Custom 24. I'd see if they could do the 5-way rotary switch again, because I loved that. And a satin black neck or a satin wood neck, depending on what the wood was. And then things like hip shot knobs, which I've got on my 513. And yeah, probably whatever the best thing is they could do in exchange for about £15,000. So when I've got that, if I ever make 15 grand from making videos or playing guitar, then I will promise to film the entire process of me going to choose the guitar, but you might be waiting for a long time for that. In the meantime, I've got my 513. This is my number 1. So those are the hip shot knobs that I was talking about. They're like matte black, knobs, same as what's on the Mark Holcomb guitars. And yeah, probably be something like that, but definitely made by the man, Mr. Paul Reed Smith. What? Yeah, so thanks for your questions, Josh, you absolute legend. If you want to check out some of Josh's playing, you're more than welcome to do so. He also featured in the PRS Guitar Owners Worldwide collaboration video, first of its kind, just saying, that we put out for Mr. Reed Smith's birthday back in the day, and you can check that out. I'll put a link in the description below, so check out his playing down there. He comes just before me, because he's got a very similar guitar to mine, and I just thought it was quite fitting. He ends with a dive bomb, so I thought I would start with a dive bomb. Anyway, it's all a bit of fun, but you can check out his playing down below.